For the first several years after my move to New York, if anyone happened to ask me what I thought of the city or how I liked it compared to Boston, the city I'd left behind, I told them that New York City was quite possibly the most generous place in the world. I never grew tired of telling them within the first 2 weeks of moving here, I'd received multiple offers to help find me a job, an apartment, and a boyfriend. Sometimes I wondered if I was just especially lucky to have met some really wonderful people. People like Judith Barcroft, a gifted actress, poet, and painter who almost immediately started inviting me to her home and into her life. I'll never forget the first time I set foot in her apartment. She was hosting a small party and had been kind enough to invite me. I knew very few people, but we were both members of Circle East, and she had brought her considerable talents to more than one reading of my short plays. The moment I entered her apartment, she whisked me off to a small room in the back, where seated on the sofa in the corner was none other than Sir Peter Shaffer, author of Amadeus and Equus, someone I naturally idolized. "You're both playwrights," she said. "You must get to know one another." But even before I met Judith, there was the matter of how I ended up finally taking the plunge to move to the city I'd always been afraid to try and call home. My film, All the Rage, had been released in the fall of '99 and the spring of 2000, and the reviews had been pretty good, and it seemed a logical time to take the leap. My friends Kevin and Jim lived in one of those big, solid apartments in Washington Heights. You know, the sort of apartments that were built to be apartments, pre-war, with a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, all separate, actual mapped-out rooms, designed by an architect. For years, they'd been telling me to just come. It was only their incredibly generous offer to rent me their dining room, where I slept on a futon beside, well, half underneath their Steinway Grand, that helped me take that leap. I don't remember exactly what I paid them in rent, but it was so obscenely low, maybe something like $300 a month, that I felt an urgency entirely of my own making to find an actual place of my own, so as not to continue taking advantage of their generous hospitality for more than a couple months. I'd landed in their dining room in May of 2000, and in June I was boarding a plane for Alaska, where as a playwright attending the Last Frontier Theater Conference, aka the Edward Albee Conference, I met Michael Warren Powell, artistic director of Circle East, which had been Circle Rep, and before we returned to the city, he had invited me to join the company. My friend Gordon Smith knew that I was looking for a day job or freelance work. Having created most of the graphics for my own theater and film projects, I was hoping to get hired doing production layout for any one of the countless magazines that were produced in the city. And so Gordon introduced me to Thomas Rolanti, aka Bunny, who spoke so rapidly as he explained everything I needed to know in order to convince the freelance staffing agencies that I was a pro, that I wondered what on earth I had said or done to deserve such help. He basically predicted exactly what would be on the 30-minute Quark test the agencies administered. And the accuracy of his predictions and cramming helped me land a gig at Red Book magazine, where I spent a couple weeks freelancing with an amazing artist named Adam Simon. Adam asked if I might be looking for something a little more steady and told me about one production manager, one Olga Kuznetsova, whose attention to detail was legendary among freelancers. She had apparently made many a hopeful temp run crying from the Condé Nast building. Many were afraid of her. But his wife, the artist Michelle Araujo, had worked for Olga for years in the production department at Condé Nast Traveler and might be willing to make an introduction for me, if I was interested. And boy, was I interested. Whenever anyone had warned me of a teacher or a potential boss who the whole world found to be terribly intimidating, I was intrigued. Often I found these people to be just terribly misunderstood. People with incredibly high standards, a style of communicating that was direct and self-assured. 9 times out of 10, I found such overachieving, towering figures to be a lot of fun to be around, in large part because I heard things come out of their mouths I'd never, ever have been able to predict. This had been true of Dolores Kendrick, my first poetry teacher. Everyone in high school was terrified of her. So when I discovered that through a totally random selection, I'd pulled her for my next semester English class, I spent weeks worrying about how she might destroy me. But I knew everything was going to be just fine when on the first day of class, she introduced herself in this way. The 3 most difficult things to be in this world are to be black, to be a woman, and to be a poet. I am all 3. And the first time I asked my new boss, Olga, how to achieve something technically that I didn't know how to do, she said, "You have a brain, figure it out yourself." I may have loved Olga's reply for how it reminded me of my mother, whose response to my 6-year-old whining complaint, "Mommy, I'm bored," was, "Only boring people are bored. You have a mind, so use it." It didn't take long for a bit of New York moxie to have rubbed off on me. I think it was my 3rd year living in the city. My play, The Wreck Behind Us, was playing once a week at the Duplex, just a few blocks from my apartment. And one night after the show, the cast of 4, plus a couple of the producers, found ourselves having a nightcap in my living room. So 6 or 7 of us were sitting around chatting, laughing, at around 11:30 p.m., when suddenly we heard a pounding on the wall. My neighbor Doris was apparently telling us to be quiet from her bedroom with her broomstick, which the bedroom shared a wall with my living room. We immediately began whispering, but pretty soon everyone got tired of worrying about Doris and went home to bed. The next morning, I left a note under Doris's door apologizing for disturbing her and offering my cell number so that if ever my noise was a problem again, she could just pick up the phone rather than pounding on the wall. A ballsy move, I thought, and one which my Boston self would have never made. A couple days later, we ran into each other on the elevator, and she said, "Thanks for your note. That was a classy move." And from that moment on, any time I hosted a party, Doris was on the guest list, and she often brought her boyfriend, who'd sit down at my piano and entertain us with his take on all the jazz standards. I've often observed that if you happen to spot a tourist in New York City, standing on a street corner opening a map, you likely won't be able to count to 30 before not 1, but 2 people at least have appeared out of nowhere to fight to provide the best directions on how to get from here to there. Some critics of our city are quick to point out that these helpful New Yorkers are only driven by their own ego need to be the person who knows the city best. But I say, what do I care as long as they get me from point A to point B? These days, the current political climate might have us minding our own business or averting our eyes at the first sign of anything remotely unexpected or out of place. In New York City, curiosity waits inside all of us, in every corner, elevator, subway car, just waiting to be reignited. The New York spirit says, "Now hold on just a minute, what is that I see?" And I'm pretty sure in many ways, I'm still here because of it.